Most people show you who they are long before they tell you directly. You can see it in a sudden change of tone, a nervous pause, a forced smile, or the way someone reacts when they do not get what they want. The real question is whether you notice these details and understand them correctly. In this audiobook, you will learn how to pay closer attention, recognize emotional signals, understand repeated behavior, ask questions that reveal deeper thinking, and stay calm when your own emotions become strong. You will also learn how to improve your judgment through daily practice, so you can make better decisions about trust, relationships, communication, and the people around you. Listen carefully, because the skills you develop here can change the way you understand every conversation and every person you meet. Chapter 1. Learn to notice facial expressions before judging people. Most people think they are good at reading others, but the truth is that many of us judge too quickly. We see a serious face and decide someone is angry. We see a person looking away and assume they are dishonest. We see someone smiling and immediately believe they are happy. But a face does not always tell the whole story. A person may look serious because they are tired. They may avoid eye contact because they feel nervous. They may smile because they are trying to stay polite while feeling uncomfortable inside. If you want to understand people better, your first responsibility is to slow down and observe before you decide what someone means. That small change can improve your relationships, your work, your friendships, and your ability to make wise decisions. Think about the last time you misunderstood someone because of the expression on their face. Perhaps you walked into a room and saw someone with a serious look. You immediately thought they were upset with you. You became quiet. You changed your behavior. Maybe you even started defending yourself before they had said anything. Then, a few minutes later, you discovered that they were not angry at all. They were simply thinking about something difficult. This happens every day because the human mind wants quick answers. The brain constantly tries to understand what is happening around us, and sometimes it makes a decision before enough information is available. The lesson is simple. Do not treat your first impression as a final conclusion. When you look at someone's face, start by noticing the overall expression without immediately attaching a meaning to it. Look at the eyes. Notice whether the person appears relaxed, focused, distracted, or tense. Pay attention to the mouth and jaw. A tightly closed mouth may show concentration, discomfort, or self-control. A relaxed face may suggest comfort, but it does not automatically mean trust. The forehead can also provide useful information. Raised eyebrows may show surprise or interest, while a tense forehead may appear when someone is worried or deeply focused. These observations are useful, but they are only observations. They become meaningful when you compare them with the person's words, behavior, and situation. Here is where emotional intelligence begins. You stop saying, "I know exactly what this person is feeling," and you start saying, "I want to understand what this person may be experiencing." That change in language creates a change in behavior. Instead of reacting to your assumption, you become curious. Instead of becoming defensive, you become patient. Instead of judging the person, you look for more information. You may notice that someone's eyes are moving quickly while they speak. That could mean excitement, nervousness, or simply that they are searching for the right words. You cannot know the reason from one signal alone. Good judgment requires you to observe several signals together. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that one facial expression has only one meaning. There is no universal rule that says a person who looks away is lying, or a person who smiles is telling the truth. Human behavior is more complicated than that. People have different personalities, cultures, habits, and emotional states. Some people naturally make strong eye contact. Others feel uncomfortable doing it. Some people smile when they are happy. Others smile when they are nervous. Some people become very quiet when they are angry. Others become louder. If you want to read people accurately, you must learn the person, not just the expression. Now imagine you are speaking with someone who suddenly becomes quiet. Their smile disappears. Their face becomes serious. A careless observer might immediately think, "They do not like what I am saying." But a careful observer asks, "What changed? Did you mention a sensitive subject? Did someone enter the room? Did the person's phone show an unexpected message? Did the conversation become more serious? Did they become tired?" The change itself gives you information, but the reason behind the change still needs to be understood. This is why observation must always be connected to context. A useful habit is to establish a person's normal behavior before interpreting a change. If someone normally speaks slowly and calmly, you will notice when they suddenly begin speaking quickly. If someone usually maintains eye contact but suddenly looks down when a specific topic appears, that change may be worth noticing. But even then, you should not rush to a conclusion. The change may indicate discomfort, fear, embarrassment, uncertainty, or many other possibilities. Your job is not to become a detective who suspects everyone. Your job is to become a thoughtful observer who gathers information before making decisions. This principle becomes especially important in relationships. Many arguments begin because one person sees an expression and creates a story about what it means. Someone comes home looking tired, and their partner thinks they are angry. Someone answers with a short sentence, and their friend assumes they are being disrespectful. Someone becomes quiet during a conversation, and the other person believes they are being ignored. The mind fills in the missing information. Then the person reacts to the story instead of the reality. Before long, both people are upset, and neither person understands how the problem started. A better approach is to notice the expression and then communicate with respect. You might say, "You seem a little quiet today. Is everything okay?" That simple question gives the other person a chance to explain. Maybe they had a difficult day. Maybe they are worried about money. Maybe they are physically exhausted. Maybe they are thinking about something completely unrelated to you. When you ask instead of assuming, you create space for truth. This is one of the most practical ways to improve your relationships, because people often want to be understood, but they do not always know how to explain what they feel. There is another important lesson here. You must learn to separate observation from interpretation. Observation is what you actually see. Interpretation is the meaning you give to what you see. You might observe that a person crossed their arms. That is an observation. Saying they are defensive is an interpretation. You might observe that someone looked down while answering a question. Saying they are hiding something is an interpretation. The first statement is based on what happened. The second statement adds a conclusion that may or may not be correct. Strong thinkers learn to keep these two things separate. This skill can also help you in business and professional situations. Imagine you are talking with a potential customer, an employee, or a business partner. You notice that their expression changes when you discuss a certain idea. Do not immediately assume they dislike the proposal. Instead, become interested in the change. Ask a thoughtful question. Give them time to respond. Their facial expression may be telling you that they are confused, concerned, excited, or uncertain. A good communicator does not ignore these signals, but a good communicator also does not exaggerate them. You use the signal as a reason to explore the conversation more deeply. The same principle applies when you are trying to understand yourself. Your own face can reveal emotional information that you may be ignoring. You might notice tension in your jaw after a difficult conversation. You might feel your face become warm when someone challenges your opinion. You might notice that your expression changes when a particular subject is mentioned. These physical signs can help you recognize emotions before they control your actions. When you become aware of your own reactions, you become better at recognizing similar patterns in other people without assuming that everyone experiences emotions in exactly the same way. So practice this skill in ordinary moments. When you are sitting in a meeting, observe without judging. When you are talking with a friend, pay attention without becoming suspicious. When you meet someone new, notice their expressions while remembering that you do not yet know their story. Watch how their face changes as the conversation moves from one subject to another. Notice when they become more relaxed. Notice when they become more focused. Notice when they appear uncertain. Then listen to what they say and compare the words with the behavior. You are not trying to prove that your first impression was correct. You are trying to understand the person more accurately. The greatest benefit of learning to notice facial expressions is not that you become someone who can magically read minds. Nobody can do that. The real benefit is that you become slower to judge and quicker to understand. You begin to recognize that every face belongs to a person carrying a private experience that you cannot immediately see. Behind a serious expression may be a difficult morning. Behind a nervous smile may be uncertainty. Behind silence may be deep thought. When you remember this, you become more patient with people. You listen more carefully. You ask better questions. You make fewer unnecessary assumptions. And that is a powerful advantage in life. The person who learns to observe without rushing into judgment gains something that cannot be developed through quick opinions. They gain the ability to pause, gather information, and respond with greater wisdom. The next time you look at someone and feel certain that you already understand what they are thinking, stop for a moment. Look again. Listen again. Consider the situation. Give the person room to show you more than one expression. Because when you learn to notice what is happening on a person's face without immediately deciding what it means, you begin to understand one of the most important rules of human behavior. What you see is information, but what you understand requires patience. Chapter 2. Listen carefully to words, tone, and pauses. Most people hear conversations, but very few people truly listen. They are waiting for their turn to speak. They are preparing their next answer. They are thinking about how they look, what they should say, or how they can prove their point. While they are doing all of this, they miss the information that is right in front of them. If you want to understand people more accurately, you must learn to listen beyond the words. Pay attention to what a person says, how they say it, and what happens in the moments when they stop speaking. Words carry information, but tone can reveal emotion, and pauses can reveal uncertainty, pressure, thought, or discomfort. When you learn to notice all three, conversations become much more meaningful. Think about a simple sentence like, "I'm fine." Those two words can mean many different things depending on how they are spoken. A person may say them with a relaxed voice and a natural expression because everything really is fine. Another person may say the same words quickly and quietly while avoiding eye contact. Someone else may say them with a sharp tone because they do not want to continue the conversation. The words are identical, but the emotional message can be completely different. This is why good communication requires more than listening to vocabulary. You must listen to the person behind the words. One of the most valuable skills you can develop is learning to hear changes in tone. The tone of someone's voice can change when they become excited, nervous, angry, disappointed, interested, or afraid. A person may speak faster when they feel pressure. They may become unusually quiet when discussing something personal. Their voice may become sharper when they feel challenged. They may laugh while talking about something uncomfortable because they are trying to reduce tension. None of these signals gives you a complete answer by itself, but each one gives you information worth noticing. Imagine you ask someone about a decision they made, and they respond confidently at first. Then you mention one specific part of the decision, and suddenly their voice becomes softer. They pause before answering. Their words become less direct. That change does not automatically mean they are lying. It may mean they are uncertain. It may mean they have not fully considered the issue. It may mean they are worried about how you will react. It may even mean they are trying to remember something accurately. The important point is that something changed. Instead of ignoring the change or immediately creating a negative story, you can use it as an invitation to listen more carefully. Pauses are especially interesting because they often contain information. When someone pauses before answering a question, the pause may show that they are thinking carefully. It may show that the subject is emotionally difficult. It may mean they want to choose their words wisely. Sometimes a person pauses because they do not know what to say. Sometimes they pause because they know exactly what they want to say, but are afraid to say it. The pause does not tell you which explanation is correct. It simply tells you that there may be something worth understanding. This is where patience becomes a powerful communication skill. Many people become uncomfortable when there is silence, so they rush to fill it. They ask another question. They change the subject. They start talking about themselves. But if you can tolerate a few quiet seconds, you may give someone the space they need to speak honestly. A person may begin with a short answer and then continue after a moment of silence. That second part may contain the information they were not ready to share immediately. Sometimes the best thing you can do in a conversation is simply wait. Think about the difference between asking someone, "Are you upset?" and asking, "You seem quieter than usual. Is something bothering you?" The first question already contains a conclusion. The second question is more open. It allows the person to explain their experience without feeling forced into your interpretation. This is a small but important difference. When you listen carefully, you do not try to control the answer. You create an environment where the other person can give you a more honest one. Your goal should not be to analyze every word like a professional investigator. That can make you suspicious and exhausted. The goal is to become more aware of patterns. Notice when a person speaks differently about certain topics. Notice when their confidence increases or decreases. Notice when they become more detailed and when they suddenly become vague. Notice when their tone becomes warmer. Notice when their answers become shorter. Then consider the situation before making any judgment. For example, imagine a friend who normally tells you long stories about their day. One evening, you ask how work went, and they simply say, "It was okay." You could assume they are angry with you. You could decide they do not want to talk to you. Or you could recognize the change and gently ask another question. Perhaps they had a difficult conversation with their manager. Perhaps they made a mistake and feel embarrassed. Perhaps they are tired and need rest. Perhaps nothing serious happened at all. Your observation is useful, but your assumption may be wrong. Listening gives you the opportunity to find out. This principle is also important when someone is speaking about a difficult experience. People often communicate emotions indirectly. A person may say, "It wasn't a big deal," while their voice becomes quiet. They may describe something painful and then immediately change the subject. They may laugh at a moment that seems emotionally serious. They may say they are not worried while repeatedly returning to the same concern. These patterns can tell you that the spoken words may not fully express the emotional weight of the situation. Again, this does not mean you should decide what they feel. It means you should listen with more care. There is a powerful question you can ask yourself during any conversation. What is this person trying to communicate beyond the sentence? This question changes the way you listen. Instead of focusing only on the literal meaning, you become interested in the emotional message. If someone says, "I don't care," perhaps they truly do not care. But perhaps they care deeply and are trying to protect themselves from disappointment. If someone says, "It doesn't matter," perhaps it does not matter, or perhaps they are afraid to admit that it matters a great deal. You cannot know until you listen to the whole conversation. The ability to hear emotional meaning also requires you to understand your own emotional reactions. Sometimes we do not listen to people because their words trigger something inside us. Someone questions our decision, and we immediately become defensive. Someone gives us feedback, and we hear criticism instead of useful information. Someone speaks with confidence, and we assume they are trying to control us. When our emotions become strong, our listening ability often becomes weaker. We stop receiving information and start preparing a defense. A mature listener learns to pause internally before responding. If someone says something that bothers you, take a breath. Notice your reaction. Ask yourself what the person actually said. Then separate the words from the meaning you immediately assign to them. This small mental pause can prevent unnecessary conflict. You may discover that the person was not attacking you at all. They were simply expressing a different opinion. You may also discover that they were trying to communicate a legitimate concern that you were too emotional to hear. This skill can change your professional life as well. Imagine sitting across from someone during an important discussion. They tell you they are interested in your proposal, but their tone sounds uncertain. They agree with your idea, but their answers are short and cautious. Rather than pushing harder, you can slow down and ask, "What concerns do you have?" That question may reveal the real issue. Perhaps the cost is too high. Perhaps the timing is wrong. Perhaps they need more information. By listening to tone and pauses, you may discover what a direct question would not have uncovered. The same approach works with people you lead. If someone says, "I can handle it," but their voice sounds tired and their responses have become unusually brief, do not automatically assume everything is fine. You can ask, "Do you have enough time to complete this properly?" The difference is important. You are not accusing them of weakness. You are giving them permission to speak honestly about their situation. People often hide problems because they believe admitting difficulty will make them look incapable. A thoughtful leader listens for signs that someone needs support before the problem becomes larger. There is also a lesson here about trust. Trust does not come from listening only when someone says what you want to hear. Trust grows when people feel that you are paying attention to them as complete human beings. When someone speaks, put your phone away. Look at them. Let them finish their sentence. Do not interrupt every pause. Do not immediately turn their experience into a story about yourself. Give them the dignity of being heard. These simple actions communicate something powerful. They tell the other person that their words matter. But remember, careful listening does not mean believing everything without thinking. You can listen respectfully and still use good judgment. A person may speak confidently and still be wrong. Someone may sound sincere and still leave out important information. Tone can be misunderstood. Pauses can have many causes. Words can be chosen carefully or carelessly. This is why good judgment comes from combining what you hear with what you observe over time. Listen to the words, notice the tone, pay attention to the pauses. Then compare the conversation with the person's actions and patterns. When you develop this ability, you become harder to manipulate and easier to connect with. You notice when a conversation is moving toward conflict before the argument becomes serious. You recognize when someone is excited about an opportunity. You hear uncertainty behind confident words. You notice when someone wants to speak but does not know how to begin. You become more sensitive to the emotional needs of the people around you. Most importantly, you stop treating communication as a simple exchange of sentences. You begin to understand that every conversation contains information about thoughts, feelings, fears, expectations, and intentions. So the next time someone speaks to you, resist the urge to prepare your response immediately. Listen to the exact words. Listen to the speed of their speech. Listen for changes in volume. Notice when their voice becomes tense or relaxed. Pay attention to the moments when they stop. Give silence enough time to do its work. Then ask yourself what you still need to understand before you make a judgment. The person in front of you may be telling you more than you realize, but you will only notice it when you stop listening merely to respond and start listening to understand. Chapter 3. Study body language to understand hidden feelings. People often say one thing with their words while their body communicates something different. A person may tell you they feel comfortable, yet their shoulders remain tense and their hands keep moving. Someone may say they are confident, but their posture becomes smaller when an important question is asked. Another person may say they are interested in a conversation while constantly looking toward the door. These signals do not give you absolute answers, but they give you valuable information. If you want to understand people better, learn to observe how they sit, stand, move, and respond physically. Body language can help you notice emotions that people may not express clearly through words, but the real skill is learning to observe these signals without making careless assumptions. Think about how often people communicate before they ever speak. When someone walks into a room, you can often notice whether they appear relaxed or uncomfortable. You may see someone sitting with an open posture, facing the people around them, or you may see someone keeping their arms close to their body and avoiding interaction. You may notice a person leaning forward when someone speaks, or leaning away when a certain subject comes up. These small movements can provide clues about attention, comfort, and emotional response. But remember this important principle: body language gives you information, not certainty. Your responsibility is to notice the signal and then understand it through context. One of the first things to study is posture. The way a person holds their body can sometimes reflect how they feel in a particular moment. A person who is comfortable may sit naturally and move freely. Someone who feels nervous may appear stiff or constantly adjust their position. Someone who feels confident may take a relaxed and stable posture. But posture is also affected by physical health, tiredness, habit, and environment. A person who sits with their shoulders lowered may not be sad. They may simply have spent 8 hours working at a desk. This is why you should never take one physical signal and turn it into a complete conclusion about someone's emotions. The better approach is to look for changes. Imagine you are talking with someone who normally sits comfortably and maintains an open posture. Then you mention a specific topic, and suddenly they lean back and become more rigid. That change is worth noticing. It may mean they disagree with you. It may mean they are uncomfortable with the subject. It may mean they need time to think. It may even mean they are physically tired at that moment. You do not know the answer yet, but you have noticed something important. The change gives you a reason to listen more carefully and perhaps ask a thoughtful question. Hands can also reveal useful information. People often move their hands differently when their emotions change. Someone may touch their face when they feel nervous. Another person may grip their hands tightly when they feel pressure. Someone may move their hands freely when they are excited about an idea. A person may suddenly stop using their hands when they become uncomfortable. These behaviors can be interesting to observe, but they should never be treated as automatic proof of a specific emotion. Human beings have personal habits. Some people touch their face frequently without feeling nervous. Others naturally speak with very little movement. Context matters. The same is true for eye contact. Many people have been taught that eye contact always means confidence and looking away means dishonesty. That is far too simple. A person may avoid eye contact because they are shy, nervous, respectful, distracted, or thinking deeply. Another person may maintain strong eye contact because they are confident, interested, or simply accustomed to doing so. Eye contact becomes more meaningful when you understand a person's normal behavior. If someone who normally looks at you suddenly avoids your eyes during one part of a conversation, that change may deserve attention. But even then, it is only a clue. One of the most useful ideas in understanding body language is to look for groups of signals instead of isolated movements. Imagine someone says they are comfortable with a decision. At the same time, they become quiet, lean away, stop making eye contact, and give very short answers. One signal alone would not tell you much. Several changes happening together may suggest that the person has concerns they have not expressed. You still should not assume the reason. Instead, you can ask, is there anything about this decision that you are unsure about? A good question can turn an observation into useful understanding. This approach requires patience because people are complicated. You are not reading a machine with predictable responses. You are observing a human being with a history, personality, mood, and personal experiences. The same movement can mean different things to different people. Someone may cross their arms because they are defensive or because they are cold. Someone may look down because they feel embarrassed or because they are thinking. Someone may sit far away because they feel uncomfortable or because they simply prefer personal space. The wise observer keeps several possible explanations in mind instead of choosing the first one. This is especially important when dealing with people you do not know well. When you meet someone for the first time, you do not yet understand their normal behavior. You have no baseline for comparison. You may see a person who speaks quietly and assume they lack confidence when they may simply be naturally calm. You may meet someone who rarely smiles and decide they are unfriendly when they may actually be thoughtful and kind. You may see someone who moves constantly and think they are impatient when they may simply have a high level of energy. First impressions can be useful, but they are never complete. When you become better at observing body language, you also become better at noticing emotional changes during conversations. Imagine you are talking with a friend about their future plans. At first, they are relaxed and speaking freely. Then you mention a specific responsibility and their body becomes tense. Their shoulders rise, their hands become still, their voice changes. That combination suggests that the subject may have emotional weight for them. You do not need to push aggressively. You can simply say, "You seem a little uncomfortable talking about that. Is there something you want to discuss?" You are giving the person an opportunity instead of forcing a conclusion. This is where empathy becomes more valuable than cleverness. The purpose of studying body language should not be to control people or expose every secret they have. The purpose should be to understand them more carefully. If you notice someone becoming uncomfortable, you can choose to give them space. If you notice someone becoming excited, you can encourage them to continue. If you notice someone becoming confused, you can explain the idea differently. If you notice someone becoming overwhelmed, you can slow down the conversation. Your observation becomes valuable when it helps you respond with greater understanding. Body language can also teach you something about leadership. A good leader does not only listen to reports and spoken opinions. They observe the room. They notice who is participating and who has become unusually quiet. They notice when people look engaged and when attention begins to disappear. They notice when a team member appears uncomfortable with a decision but is not speaking openly. This does not mean the leader assumes the reason. It means the leader creates opportunities for honest communication. Sometimes the person who says nothing has the most important concern, but you will never know unless you learn to notice the signs. There is another side to this lesson that many people ignore. You must learn to observe your own body language. Before you can understand others, you should become familiar with your own physical reactions. Notice what happens when you feel nervous. Does your breathing change? Do your shoulders become tense? Do you speak faster? Do you avoid looking at people? Notice what happens when you feel confident. Do you sit differently? Do you speak more clearly? Do you make decisions faster? When you understand your own reactions, you become more careful when interpreting other people's behavior. You realize how easily emotions can influence physical actions. For example, imagine you are entering an important meeting. You feel nervous, so your hands are cold and your heart is beating quickly. You sit stiffly and speak less than usual. Someone who does not understand your situation might think you are uninterested or unprepared. But the truth is completely different. You care deeply about the outcome, and that is why you feel nervous. This simple example reminds us that visible behavior does not always reveal the full emotional truth. We should observe carefully, but we should also remain humble about what we think we know. If you want to practice this skill, start in ordinary situations. Sit in a public place and observe people without judging them. Notice how people behave when they are alone compared with when someone joins them. Watch how their posture changes when they receive a phone call. Notice how people lean toward conversations that interest them. Observe how someone becomes more relaxed when they speak with a trusted friend. Pay attention to changes, but do not create stories about strangers. You are training your attention, not collecting conclusions. Then bring that awareness into your daily conversations. When you speak with someone, notice their posture, gestures, facial expressions, and physical distance. Pay attention to whether their body becomes more open or more closed as the discussion continues. Compare these observations with their words and tone. If the signals seem different, do not immediately decide that the person is dishonest. Instead, become curious, ask questions, listen, give them time. You may discover that the difference comes from fear, uncertainty, excitement, or something you could not have understood from their words alone. The greatest mistake you can make with body language is becoming overconfident. Once people learn about physical signals, they sometimes start believing they can read every person perfectly. That confidence can actually make them worse observers. They begin labeling everyone. Crossed arms become defensiveness. Looking away becomes dishonesty. Moving around becomes anxiety. Silence becomes anger. Suddenly, every action has one fixed meaning. That is not understanding people. That is replacing one form of quick judgment with another. Real understanding requires a balanced mind. Notice the body. Listen to the words. Hear the tone. Consider the environment. Remember the person's usual behavior. Look for changes and groups of signals. Then give the person the chance to explain themselves. This process may take longer than making a quick judgment, but it will usually lead to better decisions. The goal is not to become perfect at reading people. The goal is to become less careless when interpreting them. When you practice this consistently, you begin to notice the quiet moments that others miss. You notice when someone becomes more comfortable because you change the way you speak. You notice when a person needs more time before answering. You notice when enthusiasm disappears from a conversation. You notice when someone seems ready to speak but is holding back. These observations can make you a better friend, a better leader, a better communicator, and a more thoughtful person. So when you are with people, do not only listen to the words coming from their mouths. Observe the person sitting in front of you. Notice how they move when they feel comfortable. Notice how they change when the subject becomes important. Notice the difference between their normal behavior and their behavior under pressure. Then remember that every signal is a clue, not a final answer. The real skill is not simply seeing what the body is doing. The real skill is staying patient enough to understand why it may be happening before you decide what it means. Chapter 4. Watch people's actions instead of trusting promises. People can say almost anything when they want to make a good impression. They can promise to change, they can promise to help, they can promise to call, to show up, to finish the work, or to keep their word. Sometimes they mean every word they say. Sometimes they are speaking from emotion and have not thought carefully about what they are promising. Sometimes they say what they believe you want to hear. The problem is not that words have no value. Words matter. But when you want to understand someone's character, intentions, and reliability, you must pay close attention to what they repeatedly do. Actions give you evidence. Promises give you possibilities. If you want to read people wisely, learn to compare what they say with what they actually do. Imagine someone tells you, "I will always be there for you." Those words may feel comforting. You may believe them because you want to believe them. But time eventually gives you the answer. What happens when you need help? What happens when you are going through a difficult period? What happens when supporting you becomes inconvenient? Does the person make time for you, or do they disappear? Do they listen when you need to speak, or do they only appear when life is easy? The answer is not found in the original promise. It is found in the pattern of behavior that follows. This is one of the most important lessons in understanding human behavior. Never judge a person's character from one impressive moment. Watch what they do consistently. Anyone can be kind once. Anyone can be generous once. Anyone can work hard for a few days. Anyone can apologize after making a mistake. But character becomes visible through repeated behavior. A person who respects others will usually show respect when there is nothing to gain. A responsible person will usually take responsibility when things go wrong. A reliable person will usually keep commitments, even when keeping them requires effort. This does not mean you should become suspicious of everyone. That would be another form of poor judgment. The goal is not to distrust people. The goal is to trust with awareness. Give people the opportunity to show you who they are through their actions. Do not demand perfection from them, because nobody is perfect. Instead, look for consistency. A good person may make a mistake. A reliable person may sometimes fail. A thoughtful person may occasionally make a poor decision. What matters is what happens afterward. Do they admit the mistake? Do they correct it? Do they learn from it? Their response tells you more than the mistake itself. Think about the difference between someone who says, "I am going to change," and someone who quietly begins changing their behavior. The first person gives you a statement. The second person gives you evidence. If someone says they want to become more disciplined, watch how they manage their time. If they say they want to become healthier, notice what they do when nobody is watching. If they say they want to improve a relationship, watch how they communicate during difficult conversations. Real change does not need constant announcements. It becomes visible through behavior. This principle is especially important when you are making decisions about who to trust. Trust should not be based only on how comfortable someone makes you feel. Some people are excellent at creating a positive first impression. They speak confidently, they smile easily, they tell you exactly what you want to hear. You may feel like you have known them for years after one conversation, but emotional comfort is not the same as reliability. A person can make you feel good and still be irresponsible. Another person may be quiet and less charming, but extremely dependable. If you want to judge wisely, look beyond personality and observe patterns. In the workplace, this lesson becomes very clear. Imagine you have a team member who constantly says, "I will finish it today." You hear the promise again and again, but the deadline keeps passing. Each time there is another explanation. The person may be sincere, but sincerity alone does not complete the work. At some point, you must stop measuring the person by what they promise and start measuring the situation by what they deliver. This does not mean you attack or insult them. It means you become realistic. You adjust responsibilities based on demonstrated performance rather than hopeful words. The same principle applies to leadership. A good leader should not only listen to what people say during meetings. A good leader watches what happens afterward. When a team agrees to take action, who follows through? Who needs constant reminders? Who takes initiative? Who quietly solves problems before they become serious? These behaviors reveal important information about responsibility. Over time, you begin to understand who can be trusted with important tasks and who needs more structure and support. There is also a powerful lesson here about promises you make to yourself. Many people are very good at making promises to themselves and very poor at keeping them. They say they will wake up early, they will exercise, they will read, they will save money, they will learn a new skill, they will stop wasting time. The promise feels good because it creates the emotional feeling of progress. But the next morning the alarm rings and the real test begins. The person discovers that wanting change is easier than practicing change. If you want to understand your own behavior, watch what you repeatedly do. Your daily actions are often more honest than your intentions. You may sincerely want a better life, but your calendar shows where your time actually goes. You may sincerely want financial stability, but your spending habits reveal your priorities. You may sincerely want stronger relationships, but your attention shows whether you make time for people. This is not a reason to criticize yourself. It is an opportunity to become honest with yourself. You cannot improve what you refuse to observe. The human mind often protects us from uncomfortable truth. We like to believe the best about people we care about. We also like to believe the best about ourselves. Sometimes that hope becomes so strong that we ignore clear evidence. Someone repeatedly breaks promises, but we keep believing the next promise will be different. Someone repeatedly treats us poorly, but we focus on the few times they were kind. Someone repeatedly avoids responsibility, but we continue giving them important tasks because we want to believe they will finally change. Hope is valuable, but hope should not blind you to patterns. One of the smartest things you can do is separate potential from performance. Potential is what someone might become. Performance is what they are demonstrating now. You can encourage someone's potential while still making decisions based on their current actions. You can believe that a person is capable of improving without giving them responsibilities they have not yet shown they can handle. This is not cruelty, it is practical judgment. People deserve opportunities to grow, but trust should develop through evidence. Consider a friendship. A friend tells you that they care about your problems. When you are successful, they celebrate with you. But when you face difficulty, they stop answering your messages. You may hear many explanations, but the pattern remains. Their words say they care, while their actions show limited availability when life becomes difficult. The right response is not necessarily anger. Perhaps they have their own struggles. Perhaps they do not know how to support someone during difficult times. But you should notice the pattern and adjust your expectations accordingly. The same idea applies to relationships where someone repeatedly apologizes without changing. An apology can be meaningful, but an apology without changed behavior eventually loses its power. If someone says, "I'm sorry," and then makes the same choice again and again, you should pay attention to the pattern. The important question is not whether they know how to say the right words. The important question is whether they are willing to behave differently. Real accountability is visible. It appears in changed decisions, better communication, and consistent effort. You should also watch how people behave when they have power. A person may be polite to someone who can help them, while treating someone with less influence poorly. That difference can reveal more about character than any speech about kindness. Watch how someone treats service workers, new employees, junior team members, and people who cannot offer them anything. Watch how they respond when they are told no. Watch how they behave when they lose control of a situation. These moments often reveal parts of personality that remain hidden during comfortable conversations. Another valuable observation is how people handle inconvenience. Anyone can be pleasant when everything goes according to plan. The real test comes when something goes wrong. A delayed appointment, a mistake, a disagreement, or an unexpected problem can reveal patience and responsibility. Does the person immediately blame someone else? Do they become aggressive? Do they stay calm and search for a solution? Do they accept their part of the problem? Difficult moments do not always create character. Very often, they reveal character that was already there. This does not mean you should judge someone forever based on one bad reaction. People have difficult days. Everyone becomes impatient sometimes. Everyone says things they regret. The key is to look at the larger pattern. If a person normally handles problems responsibly but has one terrible day, that is different from someone who repeatedly creates problems and refuses to accept responsibility. Context matters. Frequency matters. Response matters. Wise judgment looks at the complete picture. If you want to practice this skill, start by making a simple mental adjustment. When someone makes a promise, appreciate the words, but wait for the behavior. When someone tells you they are reliable, give them opportunities to demonstrate reliability. When someone says they respect you, notice how they behave when you disagree. When someone says they want to improve, watch whether their choices begin to change. You do not need to interrogate people. You do not need to test them with complicated games. Simply pay attention to what happens naturally. There is something very freeing about this approach. You no longer need to spend so much energy trying to guess what people secretly think. You do not have to analyze every sentence. You can simply observe the evidence that life provides. Over time, patterns become clearer. You learn who follows through. You learn who communicates honestly. You learn who takes responsibility. You learn who appears only when they need something. You learn who supports you when it is inconvenient. You learn who respects boundaries even when they disagree with them. And remember, you should give yourself the same standard. If you tell yourself you are going to do something, let your actions prove it. If you say you want to become more disciplined, create a daily routine that demonstrates discipline. If you say you want to become stronger, practice difficult things regularly. If you say you want to build a better future, make decisions today that support that future. Your life is being shaped by what you repeatedly do, not by what you repeatedly promise. This is where real personal growth begins. You stop asking only, "What do I want?" and start asking, "What am I consistently doing?" You stop asking only, "What does this person say?" and start asking, "What does this person consistently demonstrate?" Those questions bring clarity. They remove much of the confusion created by appearances, emotional speeches, and temporary excitement. They help you see reality more clearly without becoming negative or cynical. So watch the actions, listen to the words, but watch the actions. Appreciate promises, but look for consistency. Give people room to prove themselves. Allow time to reveal patterns. When someone's words and actions match over a long period, trust becomes easier because you are no longer depending only on hope. You are responding to evidence. And when you learn to make decisions based on repeated behavior rather than attractive promises, you begin to protect your time, your energy, your relationships, and your future, while still giving good people the space they need to show you who they truly are. Chapter 5. Notice patterns to understand people's true intentions. If you want to understand people, do not focus only on what they do once. Pay attention to what they do repeatedly. One conversation can be misleading. One promise can be forgotten. One mistake can happen to anyone. But patterns are different. Patterns develop over time, and they often tell you more about a person's intentions than any single conversation ever could. A person may say they respect your time, but if they repeatedly arrive late without caring about the inconvenience, the pattern tells you something. Someone may say they value your friendship, but if they only contact you when they need something, the pattern deserves your attention. Human behavior becomes easier to understand when you stop looking at isolated moments and start looking at repeated choices. This does not mean you should become suspicious of everyone. That is not wisdom. Wisdom is the ability to observe without becoming cynical. There is a difference between being careful and being negative. A careful person notices patterns and makes thoughtful decisions. A negative person assumes bad intentions without evidence. You want to become the first kind of person. You want to give people enough time to show you who they are while remaining aware of what their behavior is telling you. The goal is not to find faults in everyone. The goal is to understand reality clearly enough that your decisions are based on evidence rather than wishful thinking. Think about a person who always tells you they are busy whenever you need their help, but suddenly becomes available whenever they need something from you. Once may be understandable, twice may be coincidence, but if the same situation continues for months, you have a pattern. The pattern does not automatically prove that the person is selfish. Perhaps they have difficulties you do not know about. Perhaps they have poor boundaries. Perhaps they do not realize how one-sided the relationship has become. But whatever the reason, their repeated behavior gives you useful information. You can now make better decisions about how much time and energy you invest in that relationship. Patterns also reveal how people behave under different conditions. Someone may be kind when life is easy, but become disrespectful when they feel frustrated. Someone may be generous when others are watching, but become careless when nobody is paying attention. Someone may be supportive when you succeed, but become distant when you receive more recognition than they do. Someone may speak about honesty, but become dishonest when telling the truth could cost them something. These situations help you understand what a person values when their values are tested. This is why you should pay attention to consistency across situations. A person's true character is not revealed only by how they behave when everything is comfortable. It becomes clearer when circumstances change. Watch how they handle disappointment. Watch how they respond when someone disagrees with them. Watch how they treat people who have less power. Watch what they do when they make a mistake. Watch how they behave when they have something to gain. These moments can reveal priorities that are difficult to see during ordinary conversations. Imagine you are considering working with someone on an important project. During your first meeting, they speak confidently about teamwork, responsibility, and trust. Everything sounds impressive, but over the next few weeks, you notice that they regularly miss small deadlines. They blame other people when problems appear. They take credit when things go well, but avoid responsibility when things go wrong. You now have a pattern. Their original words may have sounded excellent, but their repeated behavior gives you more useful information. If you ignore that evidence because you liked their personality, you may create unnecessary problems for yourself later. There is an important psychological reason why people often miss patterns. We tend to remember emotional moments more strongly than ordinary ones. One dramatic act of kindness can make us forget months of inconsistency. One emotional apology can make us ignore repeated broken promises. One terrible argument can make us forget years of good behavior. Our minds can become attached to specific moments, especially when those moments carry strong emotions. That is why it is valuable to step back and ask, what has been happening consistently over time? This question can bring clarity when your emotions are confused. Suppose someone disappoints you. Instead of immediately deciding that they are a terrible person, look at the larger pattern. Have they been reliable most of the time? Did they make an honest mistake? Did they take responsibility afterward? Or has this happened repeatedly? The answers matter. A single failure does not define an entire person. Repeated choices, however, deserve serious attention. The same principle applies when someone impresses you. We often become excited when someone is charming, confident, generous, or highly successful. We may quickly decide that they must also be trustworthy and responsible. But those qualities do not automatically come together. A person can be talented and unreliable. A person can be successful and dishonest. A person can be charming and manipulative. A person can be quiet and extremely dependable. Never assume that one positive quality guarantees the presence of every other positive quality. Give people time to reveal their patterns. If you want to understand someone's intentions, observe what happens when they do not get what they want. This is one of the clearest situations in which patterns become visible. A person may be polite when you agree with them, but become disrespectful when you say no. They may appear generous until you set a boundary. They may seem supportive until you make a decision they dislike. Pay attention to what happens next. Healthy people can disagree without trying to punish you. Mature people can accept a boundary without becoming cruel. A person's response to your independence can tell you a great deal about their intentions. The way someone handles your success can also reveal important patterns. If you receive a promotion, earn more money, achieve a goal, or gain recognition, notice how the people around you respond. Some will be genuinely happy for you. Others may become distant. Some may minimize your achievement. Some may suddenly become interested in what you can do for them. One reaction alone does not tell the entire story, but repeated behavior can reveal whether someone values you as a person or mainly values what they can receive from you. At the same time, observe how you respond to other people's success. This is where the lesson becomes personal. It is easy to study everyone else and forget to study yourself. When someone close to you succeeds, do you celebrate them sincerely? Do you feel threatened? Do you become competitive? Do you secretly hope they fail? Your repeated reactions reveal your own emotional patterns. If you want to become better at understanding human behavior, begin with yourself. The more honestly you understand your own motives, the less likely you are to project them onto other people. One of the most useful tools for understanding patterns is to pay attention to words and behavior together. Imagine someone constantly says they want peace, but they repeatedly create conflict. They say they hate drama, but they bring every disagreement into public conversations. They say they want stability, but they repeatedly make impulsive decisions that create chaos. They may genuinely believe what they are saying. Human beings are not always fully aware of their own behavior. Sometimes a person's stated intention and actual behavior do not match because they have not developed enough self-awareness. Your job is not to accuse them. Your job is to notice the difference. This distinction is important because not every inconsistency is manipulation. Sometimes people are simply confused. Someone may genuinely want to save money, but still struggle with spending habits. Someone may want to become healthier, but find it difficult to change old routines. Someone may want to communicate better, but become defensive under stress. In these situations, the pattern may show weakness rather than bad intention. This is why observation must be combined with compassion. You can recognize a person's behavior clearly without assuming the worst explanation. However, compassion does not mean ignoring repeated harm. If someone repeatedly lies, repeatedly breaks agreements, repeatedly disrespects your boundaries, and repeatedly refuses to take responsibility, you should not keep explaining away the pattern forever. You can understand why someone behaves badly and still decide that you do not want to be around that behavior. Understanding is not the same as accepting everything. You can have empathy while maintaining boundaries. In fact, understanding patterns often helps you create healthier boundaries because you are responding to reality instead of reacting to one emotional moment. Patterns are especially important when choosing people for long-term relationships. Whether you are choosing friends, business partners, employees, or people to work closely with, look for patterns of behavior that match the relationship you want. If you want a reliable partnership, look for reliability. If you want honesty, observe how the person handles uncomfortable truths. If you want respect, notice how they treat disagreement. If you want emotional maturity, observe how they handle frustration. Do not choose people only because you enjoy their company in easy moments. Choose based on qualities that remain valuable when life becomes difficult. There is also a practical lesson about time. Time is one of the best tools for understanding people because people cannot maintain a false image forever. Someone can pretend for a conversation. Someone can perform for a week. But over months and years, repeated behavior becomes difficult to hide. This is why patience is so valuable. You do not have to rush to decide who someone is. Let time provide information. Watch what happens naturally. Give people opportunities to demonstrate their character without constantly testing them. Consider someone who is trying to enter your life very quickly. They make intense promises. They tell you that you are different from everyone they have ever met. They want immediate trust and deep commitment before you have had time to know them. It may feel exciting, but there is wisdom in slowing down. Healthy trust does not need to be rushed. Give the relationship time to develop. Observe whether the person's behavior remains respectful when the excitement becomes ordinary. Watch whether their promises continue after the first few weeks. Look for consistency when there is no longer a need to impress you. This principle can save you from many unnecessary problems. When you stop being impressed by words alone, you become more difficult to deceive. When you stop making decisions based only on first impressions, you become more careful. When you look at patterns instead of isolated moments, you gain a clearer understanding of who people are and what they may be trying to accomplish. You do not become cold, you become aware. You also become better at recognizing positive intentions. Patterns are not only about warning signs. They can show you goodness that people may never announce. Notice the person who consistently checks on others without being asked. Notice the friend who remembers small details because they genuinely care. Notice the employee who takes responsibility when nobody is watching. Notice the person who keeps promises even when keeping them is inconvenient. These patterns reveal character just as clearly as negative behavior does. Sometimes the most trustworthy people are not the ones who talk the most about their values. They are the ones who quietly live them. They do not need to constantly tell you that they are loyal because their behavior demonstrates loyalty. They do not need to announce that they are responsible because they complete what they agree to do. They do not need to tell you that they respect you because they listen when you speak and honor your boundaries. Their intentions become visible through repeated choices. So train yourself to ask better questions when you observe people. Do their actions match their words? Is this behavior occasional or repeated? Does the person act differently when they have something to gain? How do they respond when they are told no? What happens when they make a mistake? Do they accept responsibility? Do they change after receiving feedback? Are they consistent when nobody is watching? These questions help you move beyond surface impressions and understand deeper patterns. The more you practice this, the less you will feel the need to make quick judgments. You will become comfortable allowing people to reveal themselves naturally. You will learn to appreciate good behavior without becoming blindly trusting. You will recognize unhealthy patterns without immediately becoming angry. You will understand that people's intentions are sometimes complicated, and you will become more interested in evidence than assumptions. That balance is a powerful form of emotional intelligence. And remember, your own patterns are speaking every day. Your repeated choices tell people what matters to you. The way you treat people when you are tired reveals something. The way you respond to criticism reveals something. The promises you keep reveal something. The responsibilities you avoid reveal something. Your habits are communicating your character, even when you are not trying to communicate anything. If you want people to trust your intentions, do not focus only on explaining yourself. Build patterns that make your intentions clear through your behavior, because in the end, people are understood over time. A single moment can create an impression, but repeated behavior creates a reputation. A promise can create hope, but consistent action creates trust. A conversation can make you curious about someone, but patterns help you understand them. So watch carefully, remain patient, and allow behavior to speak across time. When you learn to recognize repeated choices instead of reacting to isolated moments, you begin to see people with greater clarity, and you also begin to understand the quiet truth that intentions are often revealed not by what people say they want, but by what they repeatedly choose to do. Chapter 6. Ask better questions to reveal people's thinking. If you want to understand how people think, stop trying to guess everything from what they say. Start asking better questions. A good question can reveal more than a long conversation, because it gives a person room to explain what they believe, what they fear, what they value, and what they expect. Many people ask questions only to get information. A wise person asks questions to understand the person behind the information. When you ask the right question at the right moment, you may discover the reason behind a decision. the emotion behind a reaction, or the belief behind a habit. The quality of your questions often determines the quality of the understanding you receive. Think about how different these two questions can be. You ask someone, "Did you enjoy the job?" They may simply answer yes or no. Now ask, "What did you enjoy most about the job, and what was the hardest part?" Suddenly, the person has more space to think. They may tell you that they loved the freedom but hated the pressure. They may explain that the work was interesting, but the people were difficult. They may reveal that they are considering leaving because the environment does not match their values. The second question does more than collect an answer. It opens a door into the person's thinking. This is the first lesson in asking better questions. Avoid questions that force people into a simple answer when the situation is more complicated. A person is rarely only happy or unhappy, confident or afraid, interested or uninterested. Human emotions often exist together. Someone can be excited about an opportunity and still feel nervous about the risk. Someone can love their career and still want a change. Someone can care about a relationship and still feel disappointed by it. When you ask questions that allow complexity, people are more likely to reveal what is really happening inside them. Open questions are powerful because they encourage people to think out loud. Instead of asking, "Do you agree with this idea?" you might ask, "What do you think about this idea?" Instead of asking, "Are you worried?" you might ask, "What concerns you most about this situation?" Instead of asking, "Why did you do that?" you might ask, "What led you to make that decision?" The second version is often less threatening. It invites explanation instead of putting the person on trial. When people feel attacked, they protect themselves. When they feel respected, they are more likely to explain themselves honestly. The tone of your question matters just as much as the words. You can ask the same question with curiosity or with suspicion. Imagine someone makes a decision you do not understand. You could say, "Why would you do something like that?" The person may immediately become defensive. They may feel judged before they have even explained themselves. A better question might be, "What made you decide to take that approach?" The meaning is similar, but the emotional message is different. One sounds like an accusation, the other creates an opportunity for understanding. This is especially important when you are trying to understand someone during a disagreement. When emotions become intense, people often stop asking questions and start making statements. They say, "You never listen." They say, "You don't care." They say, "You always do this." These statements usually make the other person defend themselves. The conversation becomes a competition over who is right. A better approach is to ask questions that uncover the thinking behind the disagreement. You might ask, "What part of this situation matters most to you?" Or, "What do you feel I am not understanding?" These questions move the conversation away from blame and toward clarity. There is a simple psychological reason this works. People naturally want to feel understood. When someone believes you are genuinely trying to understand them, they often become less defensive. They may explain themselves more clearly because they do not feel they need to protect their position. This does not mean you must agree with them. Understanding someone's reasoning is not the same as accepting their conclusion. You can listen carefully, understand their point, and still disagree. The important thing is that you now understand the person instead of fighting against an assumption about them. One of the best questions you can ask when someone makes an important decision is, "What matters most to you here?" This question can reveal a person's priorities. Imagine two people are choosing between two job opportunities. One chooses the position with the higher salary. Another chooses the position with more flexible hours. A third chooses the position that offers greater learning opportunities. The decision itself tells you something, but the reason behind the decision tells you much more. The first person may value financial security. The second may value family time. The third may value growth. People often make different choices because they are solving different problems. Another useful question is, what are you hoping will happen? This question reveals expectations. A person may be working extremely hard because they expect a specific result. They may be staying in a difficult relationship because they hope the other person will change. They may be taking a financial risk because they believe the opportunity will create freedom. Once you understand what someone hopes to achieve, their behavior often becomes easier to understand. You may not agree with their strategy, but you can see the goal that is driving it. You can also ask, what are you most concerned about? This question helps reveal fear. Fear influences human behavior more often than people realize. A person may avoid an opportunity because they are afraid of failure. Someone may reject feedback because they are afraid of looking incompetent. Someone may control every detail because they are afraid something will go wrong. Someone may avoid emotional closeness because they are afraid of being hurt. When you understand the fear behind the behavior, you may respond more intelligently. However, do not use questions as weapons. Some people learn about psychology and then start interrogating everyone around them. That is not emotional intelligence. Good questions should create understanding, not pressure. If someone does not want to discuss a personal subject, respect that boundary. If a person needs time to think, give them time. If your question makes someone uncomfortable, do not keep pushing simply because you want an answer. The purpose of asking better questions is to improve communication, not to force people to reveal everything they think. Timing is also important. The right question at the wrong moment can produce a poor response. Imagine someone has just experienced a stressful event. You immediately ask them to explain every detail of their decision. They may not have enough emotional space to think clearly. A better approach may be to give them a little time and then ask, when you feel ready, can you help me understand what happened? This communicates patience. It tells the person that you care about understanding them, but you are not demanding an immediate explanation. One of the most valuable questions you can ask yourself before speaking is, what am I really trying to understand? This prevents you from asking random questions that lead nowhere. If you want to understand someone's motivation, ask about what they value. If you want to understand their fear, ask about their concerns. If you want to understand their decision, ask what information influenced them. If you want to understand their emotions, ask how the situation affected them. A clear purpose creates better questions. Imagine a friend tells you they want to quit their job. You could immediately say, "Are you sure?" That question may sound supportive, but it may not reveal much. Instead, you could ask, "What has changed for you recently?" This may uncover a new responsibility, a difficult manager, a lack of growth, or a completely different goal. Then you might ask, what would you like your next job to give you that this one does not? Now you are learning about their priorities. You are not simply reacting to their decision, you are understanding the thinking behind it. You can use this method with yourself as well. When you feel a strong emotion, ask yourself questions before reacting. If you feel angry, ask, what exactly am I angry about? If you feel jealous, ask, what do I believe this person has that I want? If you feel afraid, ask, what outcome am I worried about? If you feel stuck, ask, what decision am I avoiding? These questions can reveal thoughts that are operating quietly beneath your behavior. Self-awareness often begins with the courage to ask yourself honest questions. Another powerful question is, what would change your mind? This question can reveal how flexible a person's thinking is. Some people have strong opinions but remain open to new information. Others have already decided what they believe and are unwilling to consider anything else. If you are having an important discussion, knowing what evidence someone would consider can help you understand their reasoning. It also encourages intellectual honesty because it asks whether the person's position is based on evidence or simply on emotion and identity. You can also ask, "What do you think I am missing?" This is an excellent question during disagreements because it recognizes that you may not have the complete picture. Instead of assuming you understand everything, you give the other person a chance to correct your understanding. Sometimes you will discover that you misunderstood a simple detail. Other times, you may discover that the person has a completely different perspective on the situation. Either way, you gain information. There is a difference between asking questions to understand and asking questions to confirm what you already believe. Many people fall into the second habit without realizing it. They ask questions that are designed to prove their opinion. If they believe someone is lazy, they look for evidence of laziness. If they believe someone is dishonest, they interpret every mistake as proof. This is dangerous, because once you decide what someone is like, you may stop listening to information that challenges your belief. Better questions should make you more open to discovering something unexpected. For example, instead of asking, "Why are you always irresponsible?" ask, "What is making it difficult for you to complete this?" The first question attacks identity. The second explores the problem. Perhaps the person lacks skills. Perhaps the workload is unrealistic. Perhaps they are distracted by another problem. Perhaps they are simply not taking responsibility. You cannot know until you ask. A question that separates the person from the problem creates more space for honest information. Good questions can also reveal values. Ask someone, "What does success mean to you?" You may hear answers about money, freedom, family, recognition, security, creativity, or personal growth. Ask, "What makes you feel proud of yourself?" You may discover what they consider meaningful. Ask, "What kind of person do you want to become?" You may learn what they admire and what they hope to change. These questions are more personal, so they should be used with appropriate trust and respect, but they can reveal a person's internal priorities in a way that ordinary conversation may not. You can learn a great deal by noticing how people answer questions, not just what they answer. Do they become energized when discussing certain subjects? Do they avoid specific topics? Do they give detailed answers or very short ones? Do they become defensive when challenged? Do they ask thoughtful questions in return? These responses can provide clues about confidence, interest, fear, and openness. Again, they are clues, not proof. Your job is to remain curious rather than certain. Sometimes the best question is a simple one. "Tell me more." This short phrase can be surprisingly powerful. A person may mention something important in the middle of a conversation and then move quickly to another subject. When you say, "Tell me more," you show that you noticed. You give them permission to continue. You may discover information they were not planning to share because they were unsure whether you cared. Listening deeply often requires nothing more complicated than giving people enough space to finish their thoughts. The quality of your relationships will often depend on the quality of the questions you ask. If you ask only about work, money, schedules, and tasks, you may know what people do without understanding who they are. Ask what they enjoy. Ask what they are learning. Ask what they are worried about. Ask what they are proud of. Ask what they hope to change. Ask what they believe they need to improve. These questions create conversations that go beyond surface information and allow people to express the ideas that shape their decisions. But remember, the strongest questions are followed by genuine listening. There is no value in asking a thoughtful question if you are already planning your response before the person finishes answering. Ask the question, then become quiet. Watch their expression, listen to their words, notice their tone, give them time to think. Sometimes the first answer is only the beginning. A few seconds of silence may allow a deeper answer to emerge. Your patience can become part of the question because it communicates that you are willing to hear the complete response. When you learn to ask better questions, you begin to understand people at a deeper level. You see the priorities behind their decisions. You recognize the fears behind their avoidance. You notice the hopes behind their effort. You understand the values behind their choices. You become less likely to judge someone based only on what they did and more interested in understanding why they did it. That does not mean you excuse every behavior. It means your judgment becomes more informed. And here is the practical lesson to carry into your daily life. The next time you feel certain that you know why someone acted a certain way, pause before you decide. Ask yourself what information you might be missing. Then ask the person a respectful question that gives them room to explain. You may discover that your first assumption was wrong. You may discover that the person was dealing with a fear you never saw. You may discover that they had a reason you had never considered. Or you may discover that your original concern was correct, but now you understand it with greater clarity. Either way, you have gained something valuable. You have replaced assumption with information. You have replaced judgment with curiosity. You have created an opportunity for honest communication. And when you make a habit of asking better questions, you do not just become better at reading other people. You become a better listener, a better leader, a better friend, and a wiser decision maker because you learn one of the most useful skills in human relationships. Before deciding what someone thinks, give them a chance to tell you.